Very good morning to you. You're watching the Newsroom show as always. Myself, Evan Jackson, Vice President, and of course, Kendall Makamate with you as always. Until midday today, bringing you all the latest talking points and news from around South Africa, the continent, and the wider world. Now, today, well, our discussion, and we hope that you will interact with us. The discussion is on the relevance and interpretation of biblical scripture. This follows the fallout between choreographer Simizi Mhlongo and the Grace Bible Church Elvis. It's an interesting question that we're asking our viewers on the poll today.
So that poll is up right there, Evan, and we asked the question, can biblical law still be applicable in a democratic society? That means today. Now, so far we have 146 votes. There's 23 hours left, but 63% of you are saying yes, we must still use biblical law, and that is still applicable in a democratic society.
I want to ask the 63% of you to tweet us, because in the Bible it says, men who lie with men shall be put to death. But in the same Bible it says, interest cannot be charged on loans. You're not allowed to eat shellfish, for instance. You're not allowed to eat pork. It's written in Scripture. These are all laws, or they're not even laws, because the Ten Commandments are the laws of us. But let's have a look at what the Bible says about some contentious issues.
This one from Leviticus 25 verse 44 says, your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you. From them you may buy slaves.
So slavery is allowed in the Bible. Shall we have that as well today?
If a man has sexual relations with a man as one does with a woman, both of them have done what is detestable. They are to be put to death. Their blood will be on their hands or on their own heads.
So if you have sexual relations with a man, you should be put to death. That surely cannot be applicable in a democratic society.
Deuteronomy 14 verses 8 says, the pig is also unclean, although it has a divided hoof. It does not chew the cud. You are not to eat their meat or touch their carcasses. And Genesis 20 verse 12 says, besides, she really is my sister, the daughter of my father, though not of my mother, and she became my wife.
So you guys are tweeting us. So, should homosexuals, according to the scriptures, should be put to death? Or do we simply look at the Ten Commandments and not what the apostles and prophets wrote in their letters or saw in the visions of us? This one from Kolani Nkwekazi. He says, Newsroom, we have different religions. That's why we have democracy, Kolani, because there should be a place for everyone to practice their religion, but you should never force your views on other people. Elvis?
This one from Bong says, well, what law? No one is under biblical law here.
We are under the Constitution of a free South Africa. Bongs, agree with that. Washington Gotora says, the 10 laws of Moses are still used as the benchmark of many democracies today. Interesting view there from Washington.
This one from Trevino Fritz says, people that voted yes are obviously Christians or Muslims. They have to understand that not everyone subscribes to a religion. Well, that's another one there. Very interesting point.
If we can just put Kendall in the shot here, Johan. Kendall, I want to ask you, you're a religious man, a God-fearing man. Can we still apply the laws or the views of apostles in the Bible that some of our preachers today and pastors today, they make it out as if it's law? Can they still be applied in a democratic world?
I think the context within which you're asking the question needs to be looked at. And firstly, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. And I think it's this particular platform is really for our viewers to be giving their views. And I think let's wait for those to come through, and then we'll see what comes up from our viewers.
What do you think, Evan?
Me, I don't think that you can force anybody to do anything in a democratic society. For instance, you cannot tell me that I'm not allowed to eat pork, I'm not allowed to do whatever it is. As long as I live within the laws of our society and I adhere to the Constitution and don't force my ways on anybody,
different story.
That's what it is.
Well, I would like to hear from you, Twitter handle, at SABC Newsroom, as well as on the Facebook page. But right now,
Not
in
yet.
fact, we have
Not
a
yet.
question as well, hey? We're relating to a question, and that question we turn our attention, of course, to unqualified lecturers at technical and vocational education and training colleges. That's TVET colleges for you. So we're asking that question, Eben.
Yeah, how do you view this? Of course, they're threatening a shutdown of TVET colleges, are the students, and it looks like this might be extended to other institutions of a tertiary nature here in South Africa. So send us your views on that question. The students are saying they have, at some TVET colleges, they have unqualified lecturers giving them, well, an unqualified work, and therefore they don't learn properly, which is a genuine concern.
So we'd like to get your view on that as well. Like us on the Facebook page and send us your tweet. But first, let's take a look at your news headlines. The Reserve Bank is expected to keep the repo rate unchanged when it meets today. The SABC is expected to be discussed by two parliamentary committees today. And attempts are underway to save the Trans-Pacific Partnership Pact after the US President Donald Trump kept his promise to pull out of it. Well, those are your news headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front.
Gentlemen, good morning. It's actually quite a big news morning today with everything going on around South Africa as well as on the continent. Some massive news for Zimbabweans as well. Unhappy news, really. The soccer team has been kicked out. It sounded a bit like a Bafana scenario there. Calculators all out looking at permutations and so on and so forth. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the Sports Bulletin today.
Good pass, Sleety. There's a return ball of Sekne. That's lovely football. Oh, there it is. Final whistle.
Zimbabwe are left to rue what could have been as they get knocked out of AFCON by Tunisia in a 4-2 rout last night. And Venus Williams turns back the clock as she makes Australian Open semi-finals for the first time in 14 years.
Well, she continues to create history, Venus Williams, through to the semi-finals of the Australian Open for the third time in her career. 6-4, 7-6.
Formula One turns a new page as Bernie Ecclestone ends his 40-year reign at the pinnacle of the elite motorsport. All this and more I've got for you later on in the Sports Bulletin at 10:40. For now, Elvis has got the news for you.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this morning. The SABC is expected to be discussed by two parliamentary committees today. The ad hoc committee probing the affairs of the SABC and the Communications Committee will sit at the same time this morning. One will continue with its deliberations on the inquiry, and the other will start work on efforts to appoint an interim board. The sitting of the Communications Committee, which is responsible for providing oversight on the SABC and its board, resumes today after a 2-month recess. Its chairperson, Humphrey Maxegwana, says that discussions about the process of appointing an interim board will be hammered out. Meanwhile, the ad hoc committee headed by Vincent Smith will continue working on a draft report, which it's expected to finalize by the end of the week. Statistician General Pali Lahotla says that free higher education is possible, but black students will continue to fall out of the system without sufficient support at home. He says not enough black and colored children are successfully completing higher education compared to their white and Indian counterparts. Lahotla was speaking before the Fees Commission in Centurion.
Households that have children at university are transient. They are not in the permanent state of having children at university. The question is whether there is a language that makes us alive to the fact that education is important, so that we stay engaged whether we have children at university or not. That's what we need to get to. There are only 671,000 households with children at university out of the 15 million. So public mobilization towards higher education is a very necessary component of our social discourse, because without cutting-edge education, particular university education, as well as tertiary, we cannot achieve the NDP.
President Jacob Zuma is expected to officially open the basic education Lekgotla at St. George's Hotel in Pretoria today. The three-day Lekgotla, organized by the Department of Basic Education, will reflect on the performance of the entire basic education sector over the years. Our presidential correspondent, Mzwandile Mbeje, is there to give more details. A very good morning to you, Mzwandile. And can you sketch us a picture as what is supposed to happen there today?
Thank you very much, Elvis. Indeed, this is a very important Lekgotla. This is the Lekgotla which really sets the priorities and align the work of the education department at a basic level from the word go. So what is essentially going to be happening is that all those people who have been invited from various sectors will then have an input as to how to make education even more qualitative. We know already there are signs that there are improvement insofar as the pass rate is concerned, but the issue of quality in some quarters remains the issue. That is why this Lekgotla is very important to actually remind the people the importance of education. You know that government has put education as its apex priority. The biggest chunk of the budget goes to education. So you know that every nation that wants to develop must focus on its education, particularly at the lower levels, because what you get at a later stage, Elvis, will be determined by what input from the basic level. So this is what's going to happen today. President Jacob Zuma has been invited to open this Lekgotla. We expect him to really speak about the basics, to say teachers need to be in class on time, they need to teach the required number of hours, and of course they need to really be dedicated in what they're doing, and the children also must also play their part. So these are the kind of messages we expect that the president will make to these educators. And of course earlier we did speak to Minister Angie Motshekga, saying she's happy with the kind of progress they are making, and she hopes these kinds of meetings will be able to identify the weaknesses and strengthen them, so that once the education really gets going, so this nation will be a better nation. Elvis.
Now, when is the president expected to officially open the Lekgotla there?
As I am speaking to you, Elvis, we expect the president to come any minute to start deliberations at the hall behind me. He was initially expected to address at 9, but we have just been speaking to the people saying, so he will be here shortly, because for him this is also a very important summit. President Zuma has put education as one of his priorities in his administration, because he believes that in order for a nation to develop, you need skills, and the only way to acquire skills really is to get education. And it's important that when you give people education, you must give people education at a basic level, because sometimes people would focus on the tertiary or on post-matric education. But if the foundation really isn't that solid, so the structure will be shaky going forward. So that is why he attaches the importance to say he needs to be here, he needs to show himself, he needs to give the marching orders to say the year has started. You as educators, you have the future of our children in your hands. So this is what is expected of you. So if you do it right at the beginning, so we are at least guaranteed a future that is bright.
You also spoke to the minister a little bit earlier. What came out of that?
So the minister was basically saying this is a summit really that helps to align the work of government or the work of the department, because, you know, when the year starts, sometimes people would sometimes not be sure what to do or what to focus on. So a summit like this really helps to converge the minds, to give ideas, to give suggestions really, to say now that the year has started and we know the kind of education we want to produce, so what is it that we can do better? And then they are able to review the things that may have happened in the last year. So, and then they tighten those that really didn't work out. So that is what the minister essentially told us earlier.
Zwandile, thank you so much for your time, and you'll give us an update a little bit later. That was our presidential correspondent, Zwandile Mbeja, joining us live from the St. George's Hotel in Pretoria, where President Zuma is expected to officially open the three-day Lekgotla, organized by the Department of Basic Education. The African National Congress will hold its National Executive Committee Lekgotla in Pretoria tomorrow. That meeting is expected to discuss the land issue and the redistribution of wealth.
For the governing ANC, the start of a new year signals the time to set priorities for the year. The ANC meets for its Lekgotla to help identify issues requiring urgent attention and help guide the work of the ANC in government.
When we meet at the Lekgotla, we come up with what is called a plan of action to practicalize what would have come out of the January 8th statement. It is important to do so because you can't just give promises. You make commitments as the African National Congress. How do you then guide your own cadres, both in government and outside of government, to make sure that the things that you spoke about in the January 8th statement are achievable?
The meeting comes just weeks after the annual January 8th statement by President Jacob Zuma, where he made a number of commitments. It has since singled out the land question and the redistribution of wealth as the main focus.
We make a bold statement that we must return the land to the people. The president, only this past weekend, when he was addressing in Bakersford, he makes the statement again that this year we must make an effort to make sure that we really change the ownership of the land, including that of the economy. We think our emphasis on those two clauses will make a lot of difference.
The Wednesday meeting will include ANC employees in government, including ministers and their deputies, directors general and mayors. Msandile Mbeja, SABC News, Johannesburg.
The Middelburg principal who allegedly assaulted a pupil has been suspended. He is said to have accused the 14-year-old and another boy of stealing 150 rand. The alleged assault took place when the boy denied the allegation. He is now wheelchair-bound.
Finally getting his marching orders after 2 months of inaction by the Mpumalanga Education Department. The principal allegedly tripped and pinned Siphamandla Chuma down with his knee on his chest. The 14-year-old subsequently lost feeling in his legs and has to use diapers.
It took so long for the department to act on the matter is that the matter was reported on the first week of December when schools were getting ready to close. What was happening is that we still needed the principal to be back at school when schools reopen for further questioning.
The principal refused to comment.
What are you planning to do?
What must I do?
Are you going to defend yourself in court or?
Only showing us this Bible scripture that reads, "You don't have to do anything. The Lord will fight for you." The family says police failed them.
The case was opened last year during December on the 6th, and of course, when it was opened, we then took relevant statements, and such statements have then been presented before the public prosecutor for a decision. And after such a decision has been taken, the prosecutor decided that there are further statements that we need to take, and we are busy complying with that instruction of the public prosecutor.
When the SABC visited the family on Monday, the boy was left alone with his 12-year-old sister and another infant. The Department of Social Development has already sent social workers to visit the family. Sibongile Mkanimbolweni, SABC News, Middelburg in Mpumalanga.
While attempts are underway to save the Trans-Pacific Partnership Pact after the US President Donald Trump kept his promise to pull out of it. Australia and New Zealand say they hope to salvage the deal by encouraging China and other Asian nations to join the trade pact. The TPP, which the United States had signed but not ratified, was a pillar of the former President Barack Obama's pivot to Asia. It was framed without China in an effort to establish US economic leadership in the region. In financial news, the Reserve Bank is expected to keep the repo rate unchanged when it meets today. Economists expect the bank to keep the rate at 7%. However, consumer inflation should start easing in the next few months, which could prompt the bank to lower rates in the near future. Inflation is expected to slow to an average of 5.8% for this year after hitting a 6.4% average last year. Now that's your news for now. Now remember, we'd like you to engage with us on the question that we posed to you. It's a very important question. It relates to the TVET colleges. We're asking you, how do you view unqualified lecturers at TVET colleges? There is an allegation that there are unqualified lecturers at these colleges, and therefore, of course, a problem within the sector. We'll interrogate that a little bit later in the program, and you can let us know in the meantime what you think of that on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, as well as on the Facebook page. But right now, let's go to Eben to start off our discussion today, which is another focus, and that is on the churches as well as our various societies that we do have, and of course gay communities.
Yep, that's a fact. After the break, we'll talk about lecturers and TVET colleges as I know the like. But of course, in South Africa, we don't have much chill, and the discussion that's going on is about a church sermon at the Grace Bible Church on Sunday that has set the country talking. Somizi Mhlongo, one of the country's top choreographers, voiced his offense on social media this after. Well, he was offended in the church. Pastor Ezekiel Matole of the Grace Bible Church spoke to SABC News, saying that the message of the visiting preacher may have been misinterpreted, and all people are welcome to the Grace Bible Church, no matter their sexual orientation. Let's have a look at what they had to say.
To what he was teaching about. I think he was reflecting on the issue of homosexuality, and I think the examples that might have been used, I think people interpret them differently, the examples that we use. But I think the essence of the message is that within the Christian body, there's two different views. There's people who are for, and there's people who are not for same-sex orientation. And those views are there. We are happy that the teaching came out in such a way that now today we are having a conversation to deal with issues around both heterosexual relationships and both same-sex relationships, in a way that these views have to coexist in society. Because in the past, in how people used to be talking about these things, they were not talking about them in a way that we have to come openly in society and deal with views that we are not comfortable with both ways, without in any way falling into hate speech or any way that is discriminatory. Obviously, there can be a better way of us in how we communicate and put across our message. No, the Bible is not outdated. That is why whatever we reflect when it comes to issues around lifestyle that people have already adopted that is contrary to the Bible, we put it in our statement of faith to communicate what is contrary. But it's up to people to make their own choices on the basis of how they read the Bible. But we will stick by our doctrine. We will always try to contextualize our doctrine.
Yes, Arvis, the good Reverend talks about the Bible is not outdated, but let's just have a look at just some of the things that you get in the Bible that are used literally by pastors in today's world. In Leviticus especially, the one contention, your male and female slaves are to come from the nations around you. From them you may buy slaves. Now, surely that's not applicable in today's world. You can't be buying slaves. Human trafficking and that kind of thing is not acceptable in modern day society, Elvis.
Well, the next one indicates, also in Leviticus, is if a man has sexual relations with a man, as one does with a woman, then both of them have done what is detestable. They are to be put to death. Their blood will be on their heads. Now, that particular scripture would indicate that you will not have a gay festival here ever again in this country, because everybody will be put to death. Now, the pastor did indicate that the Bible is not contradictory. I'm not too sure about that.
And he talks about it's not outdated, but everything in life, you know, we have to understand we live in the time of human rights. Human rights. Slaves, no. Putting homosexuals to death, no. Eating pork, for instance. Bacon is one of the big sellers. It's in Deuteronomy 14 verse 8. In Genesis, besides, she really is my sister, the daughter of my father, though not of my mother, and she became my wife. You are not allowed to marry your sister or your mother in today's society. So I'd like to, we'll get the pastor in to discuss these kind of things, but the question that we then ask you is a very simple one on our poll today. Can biblical law still be applicable in a democratic society? And I have to add, 3,000 years later, almost, of us. Interesting.
178 votes, Evan. 178. You know, religion as well as politics in this country is a heated debate. 178 votes in. 66%, well, they still believe that biblical law is still applicable.
What is biblical law, I think, is what we have to ask ourselves. What is it? Is it the Ten Commandments? Because the Ten Commandments never talks about homosexuality, never talks about pork, never talks about many other things. Are these not the laws that we have to look at when we talk about our society? Or is it anything that's written by an apostle or a prophet or someone who's had a vision in the Bible? These are discussions that we should have, and mature discussions. They have to be. But let's have a look at what you guys are saying. Of course, a little bit later, we'll have the Human Rights Commission in office at about 10 o'clock to talk about these exact principles. Mamelo talks about, if the kingdom of God, there's no democracy. Non-believers, atheists, LGNT must know that and live with it. Yes, but the kingdom of God, Christianity is, well, there's just under 2 billion Christians in the world, and that's a small number. So respect for everybody and everyone's beliefs.
iReport says Jesus is the fulfillment of the law. The principle for Christians is to follow Jesus.
For Christians is the key one. Mamelo comes back. She says, born-again Christians are not religious. The word of God is unchanging. It is meant to teach, command, and rebuke, she says.
This one from Lorenzo Bailey says, yes, definitely. Although we have different religion and beliefs, we still serve the same God. So says Lorenzo.
Bonga Shoba says, homosexuality is not normal. Let us love and accept them, says Bonga. Contradictory statements. But marrying your sister, Bonga, is not normal either, and that's accepted in the Bible. Interest. The interesting one, Elvis, is around interest, because in the Bible it says, you shall not lend money and charge interest. And if this was a Christian democracy, all our banks, Absa, don't have to pay back the money because you'll be closed. Your doors will be shut. You're not allowed to eat pork. You're not even allowed to eat shellfish, according to the Bible. So we have to understand where we are within the context. But let's go and have a look, of course, what's the social trends that are in the crosshairs, very much the one that everyone's talking about. This one we're talking about. Grace Bible Church in Soweto, but still under scrutiny after Samizi Mhlongo walked out of Reverend Ezekiel Matole's sermon after he found it to be homophobic. Was it Ezekiel Matole's sermon? I think it was a guest pastor, not Ezekiel Matole. However, the church says they don't discriminate against gay people. They never have, and they never will. Moving further afield, of course, hashtag AFCON 2017. Tunisia, well, they played Zimbabwe off the park last night, winning by 4-2. Today, the country also remembers the beach resort massacre that took the lives in 2015 of 30 British tourists. This, as the inquest into the victims' death is still underway. The UK allegedly issued a warning to Tunisia months before the attack, and security missed some important signs of a threat on that particular day. One of the victims has been identified by her glittery nail polish, they say. Of course, in other news, here's Madge, Madonna as we know her. Well, she is very much in Donald Trump's eye line at the moment after, she's in the spat over a comment she made about blowing up the White House. And of course, that is seen as hate speech. And Madge, they're not happy with Madge, unfortunately. Now, let's move on now and take a look at a picture of the day. This one comes from Toby Hadoke, and his captions, rest in peace, Rene, gone to the great cafe in the sky. Gordon Kay was brilliant thanks for all the laughs. Of course, those who remember this man, he was the guy in Allo Allo. Very funny if you watched it, or if you of the older generation, let's call it that. Now, our comment of the day, rather, that's a Freudian slip, comes from Tlengiwe Ngaku. And, well, who says, I don't see a problem with homosexuals going to church. Everyone needs a relationship with God. The hashtag there, of course, Grace Bible Church. That's the one that's very much in the news and everyone's talking about. Send us your tweets. We'd love to hear from you, of course, on that score. But let's take a look now at what's in the courts here in South Africa. We'll start in the Northwest Province, where the son of former SABC board member Hope Zinde is expected to appear in the Brits Magistrates Court in connection with her murder. Zinde was found dead in the boot of a car in the garage of their home in Peakenwood Estate at Hartbeespoort in June of last year. The 24-year-old's 10,000 rand bail had earlier been revoked after he was arrested for attacking his father at their Walkerville home in November. Then in Johannesburg, Czech fugitive and convict Radovan Krecher is expected to return to the Kempton Park Magistrates Court this morning for two separate cases. One of them, of course, related to his extradition hearing, while the other relates to an alleged plot to escape from jail. The criminal kingpin, as he's known, has been behind bars in South Africa since 2013 now. In August of 2015, the High Court in Johannesburg found him guilty of kidnapping, attempted drug dealing and attempted murder. That case is in the High Court today. We will give you an update a little bit later in the show as to what happens there. Time for us to take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about, well, TVET colleges, tertiary education on tenterhooks as we head into registration period ahead of the start of the academic year. Don't go away.
Today provide news updates giving a wealth of knowledge, breaking stories and crossing live for you. We follow business developments intensely. Experts and analysts tackle all challenging issues for you. We cover stories locally and abroad to keep you informed. We cover all sporting codes just for you. We are sure to give you weather to be ready for the day. Stay tuned to News Today at 3 p.m. from Monday to Friday on SABC News.
Now, the Higher Education Minister, Dr. Bladen Zimande, says his department is ready for 2017. There are more than 500,000 places available at tertiary institutions for young people to further their studies in the country. Now, he was responding to fears that student applications for 2017 would flood tertiary institutions which would be unable to meet their demand. Now, these opportunities include those at 26 public universities, while technical and vocational education and training, or TVET colleges, have over 200,000 new entrant opportunities. Now, to talk to us about the preparedness and of course also bogus colleges, we're joined by the Department of Higher Education and by the Department of Higher Education Director of Registrations, Dr. Shahida Isak. Doctor, very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning to you as well.
Doctor, first and foremostly, let's just first look at the readiness of the department for the 2017 year. Tell us more about that.
Look, the department is ready with respect to the registration. The universities are on board and the TVET colleges, and plans are afoot as it would normally be. So whatever the issues are, the students need to bring it to the department and, well, to the colleges and the universities, and then we'll take it from there.
Mm-hmm. Now, Doctor, I want to know from you, there are a number of bogus colleges that have been opened, we understand. How are you dealing with that situation?
The situation is, it's serious and not serious. Now, one of the problems we currently face is that in the past we had a case of colleges that were either fully registered or unregistered. And it was easy to define who's not compliant and who were the fly-by-night colleges, etc. The current problem we face is that there are many colleges out there that are accredited to offer 1 or 2 qualifications. They then hide behind that accreditation and they offer a range of unregistered programs. And it cuts across the college sector and the SETA sector and the private hire sector. So it is a battle, but our strategic position currently is to raise massive public awareness so students are aware on how to verify. And one of the criticisms we receive is that there isn't enough policing, and we are saying no, that's not the case. There's a lot of law enforcement that does go on, but behind the scenes, because the legal process takes a while. So we've been very successful in communicating the message to students. We still need to do more, I think. And we've been very successful in clamping down on a lot of illegal practices.
What mode of communication are you currently using to inform the students of these bogus colleges?
Okay, the first point of entry is the school and the district offices. So the first thing we have done in the 2016 year is to ensure that the warning statement is inserted on the statement of matric results. So every matriculant, 2016 matriculant, would be able to see the warning statement, would know how to verify, and would know where to contact the department. So I would be worried if a 2016 matriculant is not aware. Now, in addition to that, the media has played a hugely big role. I want to thank the community radio stations because they have been extremely effective. Alongside that, we need, I think going forward, we need to mobilize civil society formations, NGOs, faith-based organizations, and other. But the South African National Taxi Council has come on board with us to do 2 simple things. A, communicate the message and establish the contact for us, and then we'll take it further from there. Now, why this is a huge, big initiative is because there are many students in the rural areas, in the outlying areas, especially those in the NEET group. And we haven't been able to reach out to all of them. So we are saying this is one way of reaching out to them. We are still in the early stages of the planning, but so far it's been effective. So the idea is to be able to reach out to thousands of students, second economy students, who use taxis on a daily basis. And we've started the project slowly in Pretoria, Marabastad. It's come to Johannesburg, and we plan to extend this to all parts of the country.
Now, Doctor, how can a prospective student now search for their preferred institutions to find out whether or not that institution is registered? And if they're physically at the college, how do they find out whether they're registered or not?
The first thing they need to do, but before they check, I just want to alert students, there are all kinds of tricksters out there. Now, on the premises of the college, they must look for the registration certificate from the department. They must look for 2 things: that the program is registered, that the program they want to enroll on is registered on the certificate, and that the accreditation cycle hasn't expired. Now, where colleges say that they have accreditation from the SETA, students must ask the college to provide proof or the letter of accreditation from the SETA, and they must check that that particular program is accredited by the SETA and that the accreditation cycle hasn't expired. Now, a simpler way as well is to go onto the department's website and look at all 3 registers. There's the register for private higher institutions, private colleges, and private skills providers. If the college and the program does not appear on those registers, And if it is not accredited with a CETA as well, then students need to start engaging critically. They need to start asking the difficult questions. They can call us on the department's toll-free number at 0800 872222, and they can go onto the department's website. It is www.dhet.gov.za/resources. All 3 registers are there and all the information is there as well.
Sir, I know that you indicated earlier that you are ready for the 2017 year, but there is a problem. TVET colleges have over 200,000 entrants, we understand, for those opportunities, but many of them have been shut down across South Africa, citing some concerns about unqualified lecturers. How are you dealing with this particular issue?
Look, the issues are there. The department has in place, the department is currently dealing with it. I currently don't have all of the information, but there are strategies put in place, and you can rest assured it is being addressed and dealt with.
How do you deal with unqualified lecturers at these colleges, Doctor?
We have policies in place for lecturer development. For the qualifications are already in place for TVET lecturer development. So that's the first point. The second point would be to engage directly with the TVET colleges to ensure that the systems are in place to make sure that lecturers are empowered, they are qualified, they have the necessary support, and that they are able to deliver on the teaching and learning. Now, this is a process. We do have historical issues. It is a process, and it's a process going forward. But these are all the interventions currently put in place to be able to deal with that.
Will you be firing unqualified lecturers?
The idea is to have a developmental approach. So the issue of firing is it's a bit hard, I think. The idea is to empower and to put in place the systems and the HR policies as well that would take care of the teaching and learning and the HR issues. Now, obviously, after going through all of those processes and lecturers don't deliver, then the issues will have to be addressed as per the legislation.
Department of Higher Education's Director of Registrations, Dr. Shahida Issa, talking to us about the department's preparedness as well as touching on the TVET colleges. Thank you so much for joining us there. Well, we're also asking you that question. What do you make of these unqualified teachers or lecturers at the TVET colleges? You can let us know on the Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page. Let's now go over to Eben to find out more what's happening on the social media pages.
Well, obviously, guys are tweeting us so much. They're tweeting us so much on the question of the day that our system is crashed. Keep it coming, though. We'll try and get that system up and get your tweets out because the traffic is quite heavy on our system right now. But we love your interactions. Tell us what you think. Can we still, well, biblical law, as we say, it's not really biblical law. It's scripture, because the only biblical law that is law really is the 10 Commandments. All the rest can only be seen as scripture. We have it up. It's come back. Okay, so we run the poll. The poll we're asking you, biblical law, I say scripture. Can biblical law or scripture still be applicable in a democratic society? That's the question, of course, on the back of the Grace Bible Church, Samizi, talking about the LGBTI community's rights, religion, the like. So we've got 178 votes. 178 votes in. 66% of you say yes, it can. 34% say no. Let's take a look at the tweets, because you guys are tweeting us 6 love on this thing. Sipho Nkosi says, Newsroom, there are laws which were done away with, and they don't apply in our day. Stoning sinners to death or sacrificial systems, etc. Yes, interest and the like. We also done away with the law, the biblical scripture on homosexuality. It's just something that we have to accept in modern day society. Nicholas comes and he says, Newsroom, homosexuality is against the Bible, so why go to church if it offends you? Yes, but why go to a bank if interest is against the Bible, is in the Bible? So you can't go to a bank either because it's against the biblical scripture to open a bank account because they charge interest? It's the same thing. Muli Malong says, the kingdom of Satan has everything to do with opposing every good thing that the Bible is teaching on earth. The Bible also teaches us to put homosexuals to death, Muli. It also tells us it's okay to have slaves and to human traffic, if that is it. Tabani says, the Bible is the word of God. God will not change what he has said to suit this generation at SABC Newsroom, says Tabani. Cheslin Peters says, Newsroom, the Bible also states that we should not judge one another. Wonderful tweet there from Cheslin Peters. Keep it coming, guys. You're sending us lots and lots of tweets. We know it's an emotive and emotional issue, but that's what it's about. That's what democracy is about. We all have a voice. Not everyone's Christian, but you're allowed to tweet us on that very matter. Are we going to go to have a look at a quick look around the newspapers around the world? There we go. We'll start in the United States. No, the United Kingdom. Daily Telegraph there reports that Jeremy Corbyn is expected to launch a new bid to frustrate Brexit by forcing Theresa May to send a final deal back to Brussels if Parliament there votes against it. Then in Israel, the Jerusalem Post says that US President Donald Trump's formal withdrawal from a long-planned deal nations creates a political and economic vacuum that China is eager to fill, offering a boost for beleaguered US manufacturing regions while damaging American prestige in Asia. Finally, in Los Angeles, the LA Times reports that a third in a series of powerful winter storms unleashed a deluge in Southern California over the weekend, flooding numerous roads and freeways, setting rainfall records and stranding some in the dangerously rising waters. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk about bogus lecturers and, more importantly, bogus colleges with Elvis after a short break.
R1.4 billion was raised to build the institution. Additional funding came from ordinary South Africans.
It's been heartwarming to have seen the project from 2009 when the first sorting happened to see it today being completed. Indeed, this is going to be our benchmark going forward. It's just been incredible.
Jammeh has said in the past that only Allah can remove him from office, and once claimed he would rule the tiny riverside West African nation for 1 billion years.
We are going to win this election.
Even if we avoid a downgrade, we're still hovering very dangerously close to junk, and that'll of course affect markets next year.
Our markets are actually already punishing us for a downgrade that may or may not come.
Woods made a blistering start but eventually slumped to a 1 over par 73 and is 9 shots behind the leader and his compatriot JB Holmes.
You know, I just made some really, if you look at it, some really silly mistakes. Mistakes I don't normally make, but I hadn't played in a while, and you know, unfortunately I made those mistakes. I can clean that up.
Now here's an interesting story for you. Victory Training College and the Institute of Health and Social Care Studies in Johannesburg. These are colleges, by the way. Now they've been dubbed bogus operators by the Department of Higher Education. Those two colleges were reportedly found to be bogus colleges during an intense 5-day inspection campaign conducted last week by the department in partnership with the local law enforcement authorities in Braamfontein and in the Johannesburg CBD. The two colleges are among hundreds, if not thousands, of bogus colleges around the country. How does one get the license to own a college, and what should one look out for to see if a college is legit or not? You heard it a little bit earlier from the department, but to find out more, we are joined by Mr. Lucky Ditnywane. He is the Senior Manager at Umalusi's PR and Communications Department. Sir, a very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning to you, Elvis, and thanks for having me.
Now, the question that anyone would ask, I mean, we live in a country with various challenges and people want to make money and start off new businesses, but can anyone own a college?
Yes, indeed. Anyone within inverted commas can own a college. But I want to start by firstly defining what a bogus college is.
Yes.
I think that is very important for us to contextualize the discussion. First of all, a bogus college is a college that is neither registered nor accredited.
So no accreditation,
no accreditation, no registration.
Yeah.
But you do find certain colleges that are either registered but are still in the process of obtaining accreditation status and vice versa. Some of them are accredited but are still in the process of finalizing their registration, depending on the kind of institution you are dealing with. For
But
example,
what should come first, though? Registration or?
in terms of the TVET colleges, what should come first is basically registration, and then later on accreditation. However, that registration can only be finalized if the accreditation status has been awarded by an accrediting body like Umalusi, for example. And basically, it becomes technical in that sense. However, if you are talking about a strictly bogus institution, they are neither registered nor accredited. Now, coming back to your question about who may actually establish a college, it's anybody, and we are basing that on the Constitution. It is the constitutional right of any South African citizen to establish a private college, provided they have all the requirements and they meet all the requirements in terms of registration and accreditation. And provided they are adults as well. We don't want children starting colleges, isn't it? Yeah.
But it can be anybody, inverted commas, as you
commas,
indicated.
yeah.
So how does one get the license to own a private college?
Basically, we start with the registration. In terms of TVET colleges, the person who would like to start a college would have to, first of all, make an application to the Department of Higher Education and Training to say, look, I believe that I have what it takes to start a college, and then they make that application. And then as part of that process, as part of the verification process, the Department of Higher Education and Training will refer that person to, for example, Umalusi, for the accreditation of the qualification that that person would like to offer. Because accreditation is linked to qualifications. Yes. So the registration is basically saying you have all the basic resources in place to start a college. However, for us to be satisfied as a department, an accrediting body would have to award you accreditation status, and that's how accreditation comes into the picture.
And Umalusi is the accreditation body,
yes,
so you have to be linked with
indeed.
that. Right. So what is the process then that one has to follow when you then start opening that college? So now you've got the registration,
yes,
and now you need to go through accreditation. What is the requirements there in terms of accrediting the college?
In terms of accreditation, the process is very simple, actually. Firstly, there is what we call a letter of intent. The person would have to submit a letter of intent, spelling out the type of college they want to establish and so on, and whether or not they have the basic resources for that. And then after that, they would have to submit what we call a self-evaluation report. Together with that report, they would also have to give Umalusi what we call a portfolio of evidence. And then based on that, Umalusi would conduct what we call a desktop evaluation of the POE. And after doing that, it is only then that Umalusi can decide, does this application warrant a site visit? And once Umalusi is satisfied that we can go out and do a site visit, we do that. And it is only after completing a site visit that we can pronounce on the outcome of that process, whether accreditation has been given or provisional accreditation or no accreditation at all.
Prospective learners, I've asked the question before to the department, but prospective learners, what should they look out for when they knock on the door of a college?
Prospective learners, this is very, very important. Prospective learners need to know first and foremost that all the qualifications that they want to do, especially those who are fresh from school, all the qualifications must be accredited by any accrediting body. It doesn't necessarily have to be Umalusi. If I want to do a qualification in engineering, for example, then I must ask that college, who accredited this qualification? Can I see the proof, the evidentiary documents to that effect. And basically that's what they should insist on. If they're still not satisfied, then they must contact the accrediting body to find out. In terms of Umalusi, what we do is that on our website we have a list of all accredited institutions, and that's where they can start to say, is this college in that list? And if that college is not on that list, then the alarm bells must go out immediately.
What do they then do? Do they contact the department or do they contact Umalusi?
If they want to know about accreditation, then they would have to contact Umalusi and find out from us. The first place to start would be the website. If they still want more clarity, then they can call us at 012-349-1510, 012-349-1510, and that's where they will get Umalusi officials to give them more explanation and so more information.
Mr. Ditawanye, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
That was Mr. Lucky Ditawanye from Umalusi talking to us about the process that one should follow when registering a college. So you heard it all there, and you can find more details, of course, on the website, of course, on Umalusi or the Department of Education. Just don't walk into any college without checking them out first. We'll take a break. We'll be right back after this.
When cell phones get cut off, people say Mdluli was listening. Who are you?
We have to approach Dennis Breitenbach, who was the prosecutor by then.
The DA parliamentary?
That's correct. The one who was making halabaloo about me.
There are allegations here that you abused the slush fund. What do you say to that?
We don't have slush fund. I don't know about slush fund.
I respect the fact that you cannot talk a lot about the Secret Service and all that. I guess that's the norm internationally.
Yeah.
But how do we know that you, Richard Mdluli, are not abusing the funds of the state? You are counted amongst the president's men. Are you?
That is rubbish.
Also the matter of General Boysen in KZN. He's not speaking very well of you.
No, that one is talking rubbish.
You are perceived to be very powerful, General, and you know, people who don't agree with you seem to pay the price. What is happening with the old Paramkhube case?
No, I'm surprised because, as I've said, I'm a person of people.
Whether you're looking for a restaurant, public transport, or a university, a lot of us use our smartphone apps to find the closest one. On Network, we chat to those who play a role in Africa's tech space.
We have taken financial services closer to the people. Yeah, mobile penetration is pretty high.
Apple take 30%, keep 70%.
On Network, we give you Africa's social media and technology news. That's Network with Ms. Phumelele Zondi every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time.
Lesotho Queen Masinate led Remembrance Sunday celebrations in the capital of Lesotho, Maseru.
This is the Makwanyane Square. It is a monument established to pay tribute to Basotho soldiers who fought and died in the two world wars.
Lesotho played a key role supporting British forces during the war.
Use of intravenous drugs such as heroin are on the rise on the Cape Flats. That's according to employees of a local drug treatment facility, the Sultan Bahu Center.
The facility treats 132 people on a daily basis through its community-based program.
I don't say the area is bad, it's how the drugs is so bad.
So we are saying to them, if you have that issue, come to us, contact us.
Welcome back here at the Newsroom show. It's just gone 10 o'clock. That is Central African time. We're live from Johannesburg. I'm with Kendall Machamate. Good morning to you.
Very good morning. It's been a very interesting morning, a very big news morning.
Yeah, absolutely. We're focusing today on the relevance and interpretation of biblical scripture. This follows the fallout, of course, between choreographer Simizi Mhlongo and the Grace Bible Church. So we've been running a poll, interesting one, lots of interest in our poll. So let's put it up and have a look. Can biblical law or scripture still be applicable in a democratic society? 212 votes are in, Kendall.
Yeah, of those 212 votes, 66% of them are saying yes, absolutely. Biblical law can still be applicable in the society that we live in today, whereas 34% are saying no, not a chance.
Yep, yeah, the tweet's coming in. Nicholas says, Newsroom, homosexuality is against the Bible, so why go to church if it offends you? Then you can't go to the bank either, because interest on loans is also against Scripture. Christian Kleinans comes in here.
He says the Bible is not our constitution. We do not accept it, but love your fellow man is excellent advice. Bigotry is anti-human.
Simple. Lorenzo Bailey says, I just think it's absolutely ridiculous. These things will only happen in South Africa, which is really sad, he says, Newsroom.
And another one from Honorable Rooster. During the Old Testament, putting someone to death for breaking the law was acceptable, but Christ taught us to forgive.
This one from Tabani Dlamini. He says, no one is forced to abide by the Bible, but one voluntarily does so in response to the God's call. At SABC Newsroom. Keep it coming, keep your tweets coming. It's an interesting question, of course. Our question of the day, the one that we want you to interact with, of course, we've been talking about bogus colleges and, well, the standard of lecturers at some of our TVT college. You guys have been asking us, been tweeting us, are your views on unqualified lecturers at our TVT, TVET, is it TVET? TVET colleges. There you go.
Khopolang Kamogetse reckons Patrice Motsepe should open his college and help people instead of only football. Wow.
He comes back and he says they must be fired. There's no other way. TVET colleges must be respected like varsities by getting quality, he says.
And Phils A. Okitokenge reckons what is happening in TVETs are consequences of people getting jobs via connections when qualified people are at home jobless.
This one from Lebo Shuping says, I remember correcting an engineering science lecturer who was using the wrong formula for calculations. Serious crisis, says Lebo. So, those are your concerns. Those are our questions today. How do you view unqualified lecturers at TVET colleges? At SABC Newsroom is where you interact with us, but there's lots of other news. Let's get the headlines now. The Reserve Bank is expected to keep the repo rate unchanged when it meets today. The SABC is expected to be discussed by 2 parliamentary committees today. And attempts are underway to save the Trans-Pacific Partnership Pact after US President Donald Trump kept his promise to pull out of it. Let's go over to Kendall now for a sports update.
Eben, thank you very much. Good morning to you. This is what we have for you in the sports today.
Good pass, Sleety. There's a return ball of Sekne. That's lovely football. Oh, there it is. Final whistles.
Zimbabwe left to rue what could have been as they get knocked out of AFCON by Tunisia in a 4-2 rout last night. Venus Williams turns back the clock as she makes the Australian Open semi-finals for the first time in 14 years.
Well, she continues to create history, Venus Williams, through to the semi-finals of the Australian Open for the 3rd time in her career. 6-4, 7-6.
Formula One turns a new page as Bernie Ecclestone ends his 40-year reign at the pinnacle of the elite motorsport. All this and more we'll bring it to you later on at 10:40. For now, it is back to Eben.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kendall. Now, the SABC is expected to be discussed by 2 parliamentary committees today. The ADA committee probing the affairs of the SABC and the Communications Committee will sit at the same time this morning. One will continue with its deliberations on the inquiry and the other will start work on efforts to appoint an interim board. The sitting of the Communications Committee, which is responsible for providing oversight on the SABC and its board, resumes after a 2-month recess. Its chairperson, Humphrey Magnewana, says discussions about the process of appointing an interim board will be hammered out. Meanwhile, the ADA committee, headed by Vincent Smith, will continue working on a draft report which is expected to finalise by the end of the week. Meanwhile, EFF leader Julius Malema has slammed the SABC inquiry, saying it's an exercise in continued factionalism as the ANC heads to its elective conference.
That work is not genuine. It's factional battles towards the conference of the ANC. We are participating because we love this country. But a group which is a Ramaphosa group actually. The Ramaphosa group is the one that is pursuing the SABC program.
Now, of course, that inquiry, Vincent Smith is presiding. It's underway. Let's go straight to Parliament.
And then on Wednesday, we deal with those few there where there might be, for want of a better word, variances. Deal with that and conclude that on Wednesday. Then we give Cindy and her team the whole day on Thursday to then put together the final document. And then we will need a very short time on Friday to adopt the final document. So that's what I'm envisaging, that we deal with everything today. Cindy will have to run away and at some point tonight give us a document that in certain sections might have 2 or 3 versions as it was deliberated on. We then try and tie up those diversions on, or variances, on Wednesday. On Thursday, Cindy and her team will then go and put together that document, send it to us with reasonable time so that on Friday we then look at that document, adopt it as our draft report, and then decide on the way forward. So in terms of what happens after we've adopted it, we'll discuss exactly who do we send it to, how do we make sure it gets to those people. Is that program in principle agreed to? Okay then. If that is the case, honourable members, can we then move on to, I think it's page 33 on my document. I'm not sure other members have the same document, but it should be page 33 that talks to legislation. I think in the main. That's what I'm saying, that one there. Yeah, I'm saying in the main it talks to the legislation governing it. That's what I'm saying, yeah. If we're all there, can we get an indication if there are any comments on 14.3.1? Honourable Swartz, and then let us just be organised. I apologise for that. Honourable Swartz will be followed by Honourable Khoza, and after Khoza it will be Kubisa, and after Kubisa it will be Killian. On 14.3.1, Honourable Swartz.
Chair, in this regard, one needs to refer to the legal opinion that I was going to present at some stage and that was drafted by the legal advisors that makes it very clear that the Broadcasting Act trumps the Companies Act. So that is already been provided electronically. So it will form part of the report. So one can, I don't know, one can decide, it can come in here or wherever, but in terms of that, opinion, there's no uncertainty. So whether one then needs to say, to the extent that I don't think it's necessary, but it might be when we discuss recommendations for those that might think there is any uncertainty. But our view should be that there's no uncertainty, and that would be buttressed by this 3-page opinion that makes it very clear, Chair, how the two acts liaise with one another, and that when it comes to the removal and appointment of board members, it is very clear that the Broadcasting Act applies in terms of various maxims. Thank you.
No, as we've been saying all along, Honourable Swartz, we hear what you're saying in terms of backing it up, but that recommendation 431, what are you saying? 1431, what are you saying? We must find because remember, are you saying we must find a wording that makes it very clear that the Broadcasting Act?
Correct, Chair.
If that's what you're saying, we will do that, and
Correct.
we can look at it on Thursday.
I would just say, I'd refer to the legal opinion and say it is this committee's view that there is and that's the end of the story.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. So there's Honourable Singh. Honourable Khoza? I beg your pardon, not Singh Swartz. I beg your pardon.
Sorry, Chair. I'm partially covered. I wanted us to be assertive. The committee has a position, and I think that position must not be ambiguous. Thank you, Chair.
Please, sir.
Of course, Chair, it would be crafted in a way that says the Public Broadcasting Act supersedes any other act.
Baba. Killian? Thank you very much. So that deals with 1431. If that is the case, 1432 shouldn't be an issue. We can tick 1432. Yes? Okay. 1433? I'm sorry. Let's start. No, hold on. All right, we'll get there. Or maybe we'll try and do that, but just note names. Killian and then Swartz. Let's start by trying to tell you what we meant, because remember, and I beg your pardon, and Mokoena. Remember, well, everybody wants to speak. Mokoena and then Mahlangu. Van Dam, and then Chauke. What we were trying to say, honourable members, remember we're talking about regulation. We've now agreed which regulation we think supersedes. All we were trying to say there is that that regulation must make sure that there's no encroachment. That's what we were trying to say there. Now, if it's necessary or no longer necessary on the basis of our deliberations, you can either say it doesn't matter anymore, or you can strengthen it, or you can weaken it. But what we were basically trying to say there was that whatever the regulation is, the principal regulation, and remember 14.2 then says all the subsequent regulations or whatever must be aligned to the principal one. After all that is said and done, the intention is that there must be no encroachment by the shareholder. And no encroachment. In other words, there must be a clarification of roles, whether it's the shareholder, whether it's the board vis-a-vis the executive or the administration and so on. That's what we were highlighting there. Now, is it still necessary if we fix up what Swartz is saying, yes or no? If it is, how do we strengthen it? So that was the intention of 1433. So let's then start with Killian. It will follow by Swartz, followed by Mokoena, Mahlangu, Van Dam, and Chauke. Killian.
Chairperson, yes, this is perhaps better. I want to move that we retain it, but that we just perhaps clarify it. That we say there must be a clear understanding of the respective roles of the shareholder, the board, and management of the SABC. And then obviously with shareholder, we mean shareholder also Parliament and the executive. But be that as it may, I wanted to suggest that we also include at all times, must at all times be regulated in line with King III principles, so as to ensure that there is no undue encroachment in matters normally reserved for the SABC board and management. Because in some respects, what we have seen was there was also involvement in organized, can I say, management administrative matters. And we must also list, on the one side, board intervention in board activities, and on the other side, management. So I just thought, let us just put in the belts and braces. I know you said we shouldn't try to do too much, but I think there must be very clear understanding of what we mean. Thank you, Chair.
Honourable Swart.
Chair, here now, when we refer to principal legislation, one is referring to the Broadcasting Act. However, one knows as well that when it comes to Memorandum of Incorporation, that's in terms of the Companies Act. So we need to ensure, and I'm in agreement in the previous, the King III is very good, but we need to align to the Broadcasting Act as well as the Companies Act, where applicable. Because you'll remember the Memorandum of Incorporation is in terms of the Companies Act. So both apply when it comes to governance of bodies. When it comes to the appointment and other issues, we've focused on the Broadcasting Act. So I think here, what is, if you can help me, the principal legislation is the Broadcasting Act. And so we need to focus on that, and then to say, as well as the Companies Act and any other applicable legislation where applicable, together with the King Code. Thank you, Chair.
Honourable Mokoena.
No, Chair, I say this in danger of repeating what has been said before, but I thought it would be more prudent for us to start with the principal matter that the Broadcasting Act must remain as is. So we start with that at the beginning. So for 14.3.1 is that the principal guiding legislation is the Broadcasting Act and must remain as is and unchanged, as we know that there's a process of trying to change the thing. Because if we do that, then the roles of the shareholder and so on and so forth would have been clarified in that Broadcasting Act, and then we don't have to put that in. It's my humble suggestion. Thanks, Chair.
Honourable Mahlangu. Thanks, Subab. Mahlangu.
Chair, I think, my colleagues have covered the matter quite well, that the appropriate legislation should not be, should apply. In this case, I recommend that we don't say King III, but let's say just the King Code, because now you have King IV that was released 1.5 weeks ago. King Code, then we'll have the latest code that is applicable. But I think the laws that have been referred to, which is the Broadcasting, the Companies Act, and the King Codes then kicks in. I think the sentiment is fine, Chair. I think I'm fine with it. I'll leave with what has been said already.
Honourable Van Dam.
Thanks, Chair. I think I'm partly covered by a little bit of what everyone said. So my input speaks to both the previous clause and the current one. So the Broadcasting Act isn't explicit about the role of the shareholder. It's a principle that there shouldn't be involvement. And it's normally something that's clarified in the Memorandum of Incorporation, which clarifies the rules of engagement with the board and the executive. So can we add then for 14.32 to also cover that, to say that the MOI must be amended in order to also clarify the role of the shareholder vis-a-vis the board and the SABC's management?
That's fine. I don't think it's a problem, because what we are saying is, if you know better than us, maybe because you serve there, if you're saying the principal one is not that explicit, wherever they find it appropriate, the portfolio committee we think that must be what's happening. No problem with that. Honourable Chauke?
I think I'm very much covered.
Thanks. Honourable Waters?
Chair, I'm covered on everything. Just on the point that was made about suggesting the Broadcasting Act doesn't ever get amended again. I don't think, I understand where the sentiment's coming from with this particular amendment, but you can't say that in any report, because, I mean, in 2 years' time, we might want to change it for whatever reason. Okay, well then... Okay, well, maybe I misunderstood, but okay, but...
Those amendments that they suggested should not apply.
Okay, all right, okay, then I'll withdraw, Chair.
No. Yeah, we'll find. Remember, we'll debate it. I think what everybody is saying is what we've discussed earlier on in terms of trying to fix it up in terms of the Principal Act must remain as is, and any other legislation that attempts to deal with that one for now must be something that people must be circumspect of. And it wouldn't be us, it would be the Portfolio Committee, of course, and anybody else. I think that was the sentiment. So I think we're all on the same page there, honourable members. All right, I suppose we must do the same with 1443. What we were saying there, and again, honourable members will decide whether it's necessary, whether it's in the right place. You'll recall that the public broadcaster is public and also commercial, and they receive majority of their revenue through advertising, sales of advertising, and a limited amount through directly from the fiscus. That's what we heard. And what we were trying to say there is whatever happens, it's no use cleaning up and fixing up the administration and the board, but if there is no sustainable funding, then we'll also defeat it. That's what we were trying to say. Now, is it relevant, is it not relevant, is what you guys need to talk to now that you understand the sentiment, or even if it's in the right place. So we'll try every time we get to one, we'll clarify what our thinking was and you'll decide. Let's start with Loliwe and go to Waters. I'll try and give everybody bites that haven't spoken. Chauke, we'll come to you, Makosi, and then Kubisa, and Swartz. Loliwe?
Thanks, Chair. Chair, I agree with the sentiments shared there, but I think we need to insert something which talks to the emphasis on its public mandate, because much as it is both for public and commercial, but its mandate is more on serving the public.
You don't have a proposal for us there, ma'am? Remember our principle last week? You make a suggestion, you sponsor the answer.
All right.
Because otherwise you leave it to us.
Can we, after sustainability, include with particular emphasis to the funding of the SABC public mandate?
Okay, there's one. And then let's take Waters.
Chair, I agree we should have this paragraph in the report. I just want to suggest that we should, it's just out there in the ether. I think we've got to say that the Portfolio Committee on Communications must look at the funding model. I think we must stipulate that so we know who's responsible. So I would like to suggest that. You can put that anywhere in the paragraph, that's fine.
Thank you, sir. Chauke?
Chair, maybe we have to deal with the principle with regard to the funding of SABC, that I think no matter how much it is funded by public pairs, it must be understood that SABC, it is public funded. The rest, what they raise outside is something else. Because if you remember the argument of the Maguve then, was that, in fact, we don't derive our funding from yourselves. We raise our money outside there. It's after, but it is a public funded institution, meaning that the body is public funded. Even if it was funded with R1 share, the fact is that it is funded. There is an allocation that goes to SABC from the budget that we pass in Parliament. So therefore, it is public funded by what's called. So I thought that we use that principle moving forward. The rest of what they raise moving forward becomes something else. We deal with the principle because the issue has been around accountability. Remember that because you don't give us money Therefore, I remember when I was in the Sports Portfolio Committee, the rugby union will say, we don't get money from Parliament, therefore we are not accountable. You know, so I think let us emphasize that point, that it is a public institution, it is funded within the fiscals. So I think it must be that principle that sort of oversee, or whatever that they'll go and raise anywhere, but the principle still remains that it is public funded.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, Chair, I think it's important that we acknowledge the fact that SABC can be self-sustaining whilst fulfilling its public mandate, public broadcasting mandate. Chair, I wanted to sponsor the way we should be phrasing that paragraph. I agree with it, but I thought that maybe if we say a detailed analysis of the funding model of the SABC must be conducted to ensure that the public broadcaster fulfills its mandate whilst retaining its competitiveness as a commercial entity. Full stop. This should be done as part of efforts to ensure its long-term financial sustainability.
If you can also pass that on to us, because we might not have captured it all, but we've tried to capture it. If you could pass that on to us in writing, that's fine. And Honorable Kubisa?
Chair, I wanted just to say the PC Committee on Communications should ensure that the funding model of SABC is well regulated. That was my contribution, Chair.
Honorable Swartz?
Chair, this issue goes to the heart of our mandate, which is to look into the financial status and sustainability of the SABC. Now, I provided that document myself and Dr. Kaza on this issue, which relates to the performance management report of the AG. You did express reservations about that, about to what degree we should use that information, but it does raise severe concerns about the funding model and whether the SABC is an ongoing operation. So, Chair, I'm not sure that extract will be contained, and then we can decide to what degree we need to. And it might be wise to refer to the AG and say, look, this is information. We're not supposed to disclose it in terms of the Public Accounts Audit Act, but it is before us as Parliament. That does raise severe concerns as to whether it is now an ongoing concern. So there are two issues here, the funding going forward and the present situation. So I'm totally in agreement about looking at the funding model going forward, but somewhere we need to also say, but what is the situation now? And the interim board needs to urgently look at that, because that is the financial status and sustainability, that is our mandate. So we need to also recommend, and I've got the wording in that draft report, which we can consider, that the committee, from the information at our disposal, expresses its concerns about the financial status and sustainability of the SABC, and it requests the interim board to urgently investigate this issue and report to the Portfolio Committee on the financial status and sustainability of the SABC, and then we can add, and the funding model going forward. I don't know if that, because that is an issue of concern. But I do want your guidance as to what degree should we approach the AG and say we are going to use information from the performance management audit and refer to that. I don't want to, they might come back and say, well, in the meantime, that whole thing has changed anew. But if I can just emphasize that point, that financial statement and report given by the AG was at 31st of March last year. In the performance management report, they refer to a substantial deterioration subsequent to that, and they give an indication of that. By now, it could have even reached worse situations. And SOS, I think, in their written submission, refer as well to a looming financial crisis. So I hope that helps slightly, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, no. I've noted Kwankwa, Loliwe, and Killian. I'm just thinking aloud. I think, because we don't want to be writing theses in our recommendations, so I think you need to marry these two. The current situation and the going forward situation. So you guys will find a way of marrying the two without tramping on the AG's toes or anybody else's toes. But let's not have a recommendation that's a whole page. I thought our recommendation should be sharp and short so that they are achievable and understandable. Kwankwa followed by Loliwe and then followed by Killian. We're dealing with 14.3.4.
Chair, I think you've covered me in your input by saying that we can combine the two proposals, because indeed I think that recommendation there, the review of the funding model deals. It's not even here. Okay, that one is off. Sorry. Sorry for that. And I think really it's about the. No, I think the sabotage with Dr. Koza. Chairperson, it's all about the revenue mix between public and private funding, really, that we're trying to deal with here. And I think the problem is with this mic. Go to the tape. Wait. Hey. Ayikona lapha mfutshane futhi. Cima into zakho. I'm a minority party. Next time. Well, Chairperson, I think really deals with the, it's more like we're saying, we're looking at this thing, it's looking at it on a more forward basis. We're saying, in future, how do we address this problem? When you're looking at the balance between your private funding and your public funding, right, to ensure the financial sustainability of the SABC. So I was saying, indeed, I think we should combine the 2 points. But I think what is important, maybe it won't be captured in the recommendation itself. We should not really be worried about what, the misunderstanding of the SABC board and how they generate revenue. Remember, if I give you my house and you use it to generate revenue, it still remains my house, whatever model you use. It's a public asset that they're using to generate revenue. Whether they generate most of their revenue using the commercial arm of SAB is neither here nor there. So they're still accountable to us, the people of South Africa, in terms of how they use the money. So I think it's more striking the balance between public funding and private funding and trying to establish whether that is adequate for the financial sustainability of the SABC. Thank you.
Honourable Olive.
That was the SABC ad hoc committee, currently busy there. We'll bring you an update of the deliberations there in Parliament. But right now, President Jacob Zuma is at the Department of Basic Education, Lekgotla, starting today. Let's go there live.
Basic Education Minister, Mama Angie Musekha, Deputy Minister, Mr. Enver Serti, all MECs present here. Director General and heads of provincial departments of education, all the education stakeholders, fellow South Africans, it is indeed my honor and privilege to address this important basic education sector, Lekgotla. Kunemfuyo yakho engihluphayo la. Hayi sihambile. Iyangibingelela. We declared education an apex priority of the democratic government in 2009. Education is a ladder out of poverty and economic stagnation. It is our primary weapon in the struggle for economic transformation and in the quest for a better life for our people, especially the poor. It is for this reason that education gets the biggest slice of our national budget. That is also the reason why this gathering is so important for the country. You have all come together because you care about education and care about the well-being of our children and youth. As stakeholders, you are called upon to share your ideas and dedicate all your time and brain power at this Lekgotla in the interest of strengthening and improving the country's education system. We will always prioritize the education of our children because it is only through quality education that we can win our struggle against unemployment, poverty, and inequality. Our country's constitution enjoins us to provide quality and compulsory basic education to all South Africans, irrespective of race, color, creed, religion, sexual orientation, gender, identity, age, and disability. We remain committed to meet this constitutional directive. As we converge here today, we also remember with fondness the finest son of the soil, the late ANC president and one of the key architects of our freedom and democracy, Ubaba Oliver Reginald Tambo. Had he lived, he would have turned 100 years old this year. And this year marks his centenary. We have thus decided to dedicate this year's basic education sector, Lekgotla, to Oliver Reginald Tambo. President Oliver Tambo is celebrated for his exceptional leadership qualities and for providing direction during the darkest years of the struggle for our liberation. Importantly, President Tambo was also a teacher. He graduated with a BSc degree in mathematics and physics from Fort Hare University. He then enrolled for a diploma in higher education, although he could not complete it after he was expelled from for his political activism. He taught physics and mathematics for 5 years. Later on, he completed his postgraduate degree in law and went to open the first black-owned legal practice in Johannesburg with his friend and fellow comrade, President Nelson Mandela, the first president of a free and democratic South Africa. President O.R. Tambo was indeed, for the better part of his adult life, an embodiment of all that was good and noble about the teaching profession and leadership. He was also the chief custodian of the principles of fundamental social change. This makes him the perfect role model for all educators in our country. They should study his life for inspiration. We thus encourage all our teachers to honor, protect, and advance the legacy of this outstanding educator, President Oliver Tambo. Compatriots, as you meet today, it is against the background of good progress that has been made in education in the past 22 years. We have made progress towards universal suffrage of school-going children. We have made progress in the introduction of early childhood development. We have progressively worked towards eliminating mud schools and inappropriate school structures, replacing them with state-of-the-art buildings, especially in historically neglected areas. The Accelerated School Infrastructure Delivery Initiative project, through which we eradicated the mud schools, has gathered momentum over the years. Government has now completed over 135 new state-of-the-art schools in the Eastern Cape, Western Cape, and other provinces. We have also provided dignified sanitation, water, and electricity to hundreds more schools. To fight hunger and poverty in schools, we have expanded the school nutrition programs or feeding schemes in both primary and secondary schools. The nutrition program now reaches over 9 million children every school day who are given food free of charge to improve concentration and productivity. We have also expanded access to free education for children from poor households. More than 9 million children attend no-fee schools, which is at least 80% of our schools. No child must be denied basic education because their parents are poor or diseased. We have also made progress by steadily and emphatically proving matric results. In this regard, let me once again congratulate the matric class of 2016. They have worked hard and made us proud. Compatriots, there are a number of other notable achievements we can cite that we have scored since we declared education as an apex priority in 2009. We have developed and distributed over 150 million workbooks to learners from grade R to 9 since 2009. We urge provinces where there could be a slow delivery of books this year to speed this up so that all children can have their books before the end of January. Government pays for these books. Administrators must ensure that they reach our children on time every year. We have also completed the orientation Pakisa, Operation Pakisa in Education program, which gave us a concrete plan that will accelerate progress towards using technology in education. While we are happy with the progress made, government is also the first to concede that immense challenges still remain as we rebuild our education system. We must do more to improve learner outcomes in mathematics, physical science, accounting, and languages. More children must be encouraged to take these subjects, and more teachers must be trained to teach these subjects. The Basic Education Department is working on these matters. We must improve reading and literacy throughout our schooling system. In this regard, I call upon parents who are able to do so to read to their children and to also encourage them to read. Let us not allow television to take away the time of our children to read. Parents should control the time spent by children watching TV or television so that it does not affect their schoolwork. Importantly, as stakeholders, I urge you to work together to stem the tide of dropouts from schools. Our own analysis shows that only less than 50% of all the learners who joined our education system reach matriculation level after 12 years of learning. There are many reasons for this anomaly, mostly socio-economic reasons and social ills. Whether it's financial reasons, abuse of drugs, or other social challenges, we need to tackle them together. We must keep our youth in schools. We collectively call upon all sectors of society to play their meaningful role to keep our youth in schools. That is one of the key issues that this Lekgotla will be looking into. We also convened this Lekgotla to reflect honestly on accountability throughout the basic education system. I wish to emphasize that there must be consequences for principals and school management teams who recorded a 0% pass rate. We must not allow any room in the public service for inaptitude and incompetence. Everyone must strive for excellence, more so in education. Now, as you heard, I never went to a single school. No teacher can claim ever saw my forehead in a class because I never went there. But when I hear there is a school that only produces 0%, I always ask my question, from January to November, what were they doing? Really? Every day standing in front of the kids, what were they doing? That's why I'm saying, at least there must be some consequences. If I'm a teacher, no single child passes. And since that time, I've been working, being paid, which means I'm being paid for doing nothing, really. So that's why I'm saying there must be some consequences if that happens. Partly because education is the key for development. Without education, no nation will ever develop at a rate at which things are done in the modern world. Countries that are called developing countries will never cross the line and become developed without modern education. Countries that invested in education, they don't regret after a few decades. In fact, any country that invests in education is investing wisely. It's a national investment that will never go wrong. Because you begin not only to produce job seekers, but actually you begin to produce job creators. So it is important that we cannot stand and allow schools that have zero outcome. It means they don't understand the simple logic that education is what makes us grow and therefore be one of the countries in the community of countries in the world who makes a contribution towards development of society. I urge this meeting to pay special attention and develop concrete plans to attend to whatever problems that exist in the underperforming districts, provinces, and schools. Let us attend to shortcomings and ensure that we continue improving performance in education. We have no choice but to succeed as a country, particularly a country, South Africa, which has a task that we may understand and not understand to perform in the continent. Many countries in the continent look up to South Africa to participate at the head of the development of the continent. Education is our only weapon towards prosperity. Director of the program, in conclusion, as government, we appreciate and acknowledge the positive contribution of our dedicated teachers and teacher unions, corporate South Africa, NGOs, principals, associations, SGB associations, learner formations, and civil society as a whole. Working together, we shall ensure that our schools produce learners who are well equipped to help us build inclusive growth and prosperity when they graduate. I wish you all the best in your deliberations in this important lekgotla. I thank you.
That was the President speaking at the Department of Basic Education lekgotla, the three-day lekgotla, which kicks off today. Right now, we'll take a short break, and we'll be right back after that.
We have a very serious challenge with
Being orphaned at an early age propelled him to better heights.
When I was 16, my mother passed away, and I had no choice then to find work, and I had to juggle work between work and school. I've worked on different coffee shops, and eventually in 2012, I started my own business called City's Brew.
Laying good business acumen since childhood nurtured her good standing.
I happened to grow up in a family where my father is a businessman. And as a businessman, he used to have lots of friends from different parts of the world. Business, you need to be committed. You need to live it. You need to love it. You need to be there, at the moment.
For more inspiring stories, stay tuned to Bupilong every Friday.
Now, as you know, the SABC ad hoc committee into the affairs of the SABC is still busy in Parliament. Let's go there live.
In the SABC, in the corporation, and then we retain the second sentence: the task of vetting of employees of the SABC must be fast-tracked. Then I think we retain both. There's a sort of an investigation of what happened there, and secondly, we're also saying that the vetting of senior officials to be appointed is a very important matter, seeing that it is, that it is a priority. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, I'm in agreement with the previous submissions, but possibly to add a sentence that the Portfolio Committee on Communications may wish to refer the matter to the Inspector General of Intelligence should there be found to be any irregular usage of SAA. Thank you, Chair.
I think Honorable Swart has covered us, but it must also be mentioned that the vetting of the senior staff is an important tool, so we cannot say it must not be there. Understand when they are appointed to positions, they are vetted, but it must not be used or abused, rather. The second one must stay. Yeah, it must stay. The second one must stay.
Chair, given the seriousness of the situation, I mean, I understand SSA vets employees, right? But they went further than that. They were intercepting communication, etc. Coupled with the fact that from early 2015 to very late 2016, there was no Inspector General of Intelligence at all. So on whose authority were they operating and all that needs to be investigated. And I would suggest that the Inspector General needs to do the investigation, not the SABC. I mean, as a matter of course, not the board. We need a, and he, it is a he, if I remember correctly, he must report back to the Portfolio Committee. And we must stipulate, and not the Portfolio Committee on State Security, because we will never get that report then as a public, but communications. So it's open and transparent. Else we won't know what happened, Chair, what transpired. It can't be the Portfolio Committee on State Security. Thank you.
We'll get the Inspecting General to investigate and report to Parliament. Parliament will decide which committee it goes to, because remember he reports to Parliament and it's referred. But I take the sentiment that you are raising, sir. Mokoena, you wanted to be the last one.
Yeah, no, Chair, after we close this, because I want to add an additional point.
Okay, this one we close with. We're saying the vetting process must be intensified, specifically for senior managers, because it's important. We're saying any other matter must be investigated by the Inspector General and reported to Parliament. That's, in essence, what we cover here. All right, and then Honorable Mokoena says he has a brand new one that he wants to bring in. Yes, sir.
No, there's the emotional issue of local content and artist royalties and so on and so forth. And I think perhaps we should add in that a turnaround strategy must be installed to look particularly at local content and the role of and what happens to artist royalties. There's issues around needle time and all sorts of other things. So the Portfolio Committee on Communications must look at the royalties of artists, because I think we must concede that that's probably the one thing that Claudi is probably correct on, in that this country hasn't quite looked at that issue. So I think it is time.
It's fine. I'll keep on being the conscience of this committee. Did that matter arise in our effort? You see, it can't be something that we're picking up from the general sentiment outside there. Remember, we're investigating matters that came before us. The 90%, was it before us? If it was, I'm saying we don't have a problem with it, but I'm just cautioning us from trying to once again address the ills of broadcasting in South Africa. Ours are specifically listen to people, call them verbally, in writing. If that matter is there, you can sponsor a proposal, and once again on Thursday when we meet again, we will look at it. I'm not saying you're right or wrong.
I'm just saying that Dr. Ngubane and Professor Maguve specifically spoke on that issue, on the 9010 issue, and they said that it's giving work to artists and so on and so forth.
as long as we don't pronounce on whether we support it or not. But I'm saying just you'll sponsor the resolution or the recommendation, and we'll argue it and finalize it on Thursday. Are you talking to the same one? Or is it a new one? I'm just trying to understand. It's fine. Is there no, it's fine. Does anybody else want to talk on the same one? If not, Singh will be the last one and we move on. Honorable Singh. Aye. Swartz, I beg your pardon.
Just the last suggestion is, and Mr. Mkwena also referred to the advisory board. Now, in terms of the Act, the advisory board can also advise on content. So he might want to add to his recommendation that this might be a role that the advisory board looks into in terms of its duties in terms of the Act. Thank you, Chair.
New one?
To say that we mustn't forget that this issue of the local content is at the center of the financial sustainability of SABC, and we do need to pronounce ourselves, not necessarily on whether we support it as a policy, but for those who will be doing the analysis to look at as well, because it's a major issue.
All right. That deals with 14.4? Yes? Yeah. 14.5. Again, we spoke to accountability, and I mean, we've talked to this thing right through. And if we've covered it, we've covered it. If we've not, can I go to 14.4.1? 14.5.1, I beg your pardon. Again, I mean, that one is as straightforward as it is, that I'm saying there, that there was clear evidence of misleading, and now I'm not saying deliberately or otherwise, but you can't have two so different versions of the same story. And what we were basically saying here was that matter must be looked at. We did get a legal opinion from our good friends, the lawyers there, in terms of what the sanctions are for people who have misled Parliament, anybody who has misled Parliament. So all we were saying there is that we cannot not say anything about it. That was the intention of 14.5.1. Anybody wants to talk to 14.5.1? Van Dam and then Killian.
Thanks, Chair. Can we be explicit in that section about which legislation will rely on in this regard about misleading Parliament? And that's the powers, privileges, and immunities of Parliament and Provincial Legislatures Act, specifically Section 17.2, which says that if anyone deceives a House of Parliament, this person commits an offence and is liable to fine or imprisonment for a period not exceeding 2 years. So can we be explicit and just include that section? Thanks, Chair.
Chairperson. Yes, Chairperson, thank you very much. I would like to suggest the following, that we actually, that we again look at which entity should do this. And my recommendation would be that the evidence leader and Parliament Legal Services should compile a list of individuals who could be guilty of providing misleading or false information or testimony to Parliament in terms of Section 17.2 of the Powers and Privileges Act, the whole of that. And then to say within, now the period, we must be realistic. Should we say within 60 days from adoption of the report? So that we have sort of an opportunity to have a timeline to it, and we also have a body that will drive this process. Thank you, Chair.
All right. You see, Nina, where I come from, ne, if you raise your hand after somebody spoke, it's no longer an original idea. Somebody said something, you want to raise it, but here we will do that because seeing Swartz and Kubisa, Swartz and Kubisa on 14.4.1.
Thank you, Chair. The appropriate sanctions must be implemented. I don't think you can say that. You've got to have an inquiry before you can have sanctions. So they must be identified, and held accountable. Just that phrasing, because you're assuming that they are guilty. But secondly, the issue which I raised about the one witness that gave evidence about the 100 million, and then the minister indicated, well, that's a breach of the Corruption Act. In other words, shoot the messenger. Now, we need to also say, but any persons that have given evidence in good bona fide will be protected, because it's not correct. That witness, Shishudu, cannot be prosecuted for what he told us here. He is protected. I don't know if I'm labouring the point, but the minister seemed to take a lot of time to say, well, he will now be prosecuted because he gave us that information.
I'm just wondering, should we be the defenders? And I hear what you're saying. You're absolutely correct, what you're saying. But I would imagine that, yeah, that's the point that I'm making, that it goes without saying, and then everybody reserves the right to corrective action if things are done wrong. I just don't know that we should be, because that's one, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but consider it. Has everybody spoken on this matter? Yes. Oh, Mr. Waters.
Chair, just on what the...
Oh, no, just Kubisa, beg your pardon. I beg,
fine.
Prof and then Waters. Sorry, Bob.
It was scary, Chair, when you said it's like we're not original. So, Chair, I wanted to say the legal team should also assist us, because there might be other legislation over and above the Powers and Privileges Immunities Act. So we rely on the legal team to assist us if there is any other legislation that they want to add and which they deem fit with regard to this matter in particular.
Chair, I hear what Honourable Swat's saying about, you can't find people guilty before you've actually conducted an investigation. But the sentence does start with witnesses found guilty. So it's a proviso. Must be identified and the appropriate sanctions must be applied. So I think if they're found guilty,
All right. Just playing devil's advocate, I agree with the sentiment. Just from a practical point of view, how will we be satisfied that Vanara and the legal team have covered everybody? Because we're saying Vanara and the legal team must look at everybody. I'm just thinking out aloud, because if they identified 5 and there's 6, or they identified 6, I don't know. I'm saying we must be able to measure these things. I don't know how we're going to do that, but unless offline, and we're saying to ourselves here that in terms of, if we're giving that recommendation to the legal team and Vanara, surely it should be our responsibility at least to give them some of the evidence. I mean, they were part of the team. I'm just wondering, will they cover everybody? How do they practicalize what we are saying? It doesn't have to be a recommendation, but how do they practicalize it? Kwankwa and then Killian, and then Swartz.
I'm not going to answer your question, if you don't mind. I think that, coming back to that sentence, I wanted to bring to your attention to that sentence before you made your input. I think Honorable Waters is right. The sentence is found guilty, but I think the part which says must be identified then assumes that they have not been identified yet, and yet we're saying they are guilty. I think we must just tidy up that sentence towards the end so that it doesn't contradict itself. Thank you.
Chairperson, my suggestion would be that we just give the responsibility to them to identify those who have actually contradicted each other, and that they then submit the list to Parliament, and Parliament will probably refer it to the Powers and Privileges Committee for further investigation. Because then that process, they can then go into the details. Thank you.
We will not exist anymore as an ad hoc committee, so I'm in agreement with that. Thank you, Chair.
The point that I'm making, that we won't be here, but it's a matter important enough that can't be left unattended to Vanara and to the legal team. It can't be left unattended. 1452, I think we dealt with this one. What we were saying is there must be no ambiguity that the SABC accounts to Parliament. That was the point. I'm not sure if we've covered it anywhere else. I thought we covered it under governance. Killian.
Can we retain it here as well, Chairperson? I think it's a very important matter because there was certainly a move in the last 6 to 8 years. I think we should say the following. The SABC is the public broadcaster and is as a company listed in the PFMA, must be held accountable by Parliament. So the matter is not how big the funding is, as you have said earlier. It's not whether we, from the public purse, allocates R1 to it is the public broadcaster listed in the PFMA. That is the issue, and they are therefore accountable to Parliament.
$14.53, is it necessary, is it not necessary? You remember we had the big fight about summons. Basically what we're saying here, that there should never be a situation where Parliament must issue summons. That's what we were trying to say. That no document should be withheld from Parliament. You can argue about how we deal with it, but there can never be a situation where Parliament must summons anybody for a document. That was the point that we were making there. Happy?
Yes, Chair.
14.45, I think we can take out. We've dealt with it to death. The compliance with PFMA and all those things, contract management.
Newsroom, we've just come out of visuals of the parliamentary inquiry into the SABC's affairs. It's a very interesting day, a very interesting news day, the 24th of January. Now, we are going to be bringing you the rest of the day's happenings. We're going to be bringing you news as well as what's been happening in the world of sports. I will be finding out exactly where it is that we're going to be taking this right now, because I tell you what, with all the news that's happening, it's actually been a very interesting day here in the newsroom. We've been looking at the fallout between Somizi Mhlongo and the Grace Bible Church, as well as your comments as well on what's happening with the lack of qualifications that we've been finding in the TVET as well as the FET colleges in South Africa. Education being the buzzword, education being the focal point for a lot of people in South Africa, in and around the world, if I could say, especially since it's the beginning of the year. Now, our very first story that we're going to be bringing to you from the news is from the fees. The Statistician General, Padil Hotla, says free higher education is possible, but black students will continue to fall out of the system without sufficient support at home. He says not enough black and coloured children are successfully completing higher education compared to their white and Indian counterparts. Lehotla was speaking before the Fees Commission in Centurion.
That have children at university are transient. They are not in the permanent state of having children at university. The question is whether there is a language that makes us alive to the fact that education is important, so that we stay engaged whether we have children at university or not. That's what we need to get to. There are only 671,000 households with children at university out of the 15 million. So public mobilization towards higher education is a very necessary component of our social discourse, because without cutting-edge education, a particular university education, as well as tertiary, we cannot achieve the NDP.
Now, on our question of the day, we have been asking you the question with regards to qualified or non-qualified educators in basic education, as well as the TVETs and the FETs. We're asking you, how do you view lecturers at TVET colleges that don't have the correct qualifications? Now, you've been giving us your thoughts on at SABC Newsroom as well as on our Facebook page. And here's one, for example, from Iman Suleiman. As a parent of a TVET student, this is unacceptable. Government needs to intervene as soon as possible. He carries on and says students are fighting, she carries on rather, saying students are fighting the above issues and therefore no classes have started. The Honourable Rooster says you can imagine what kind of a finished product the country is going to from these unqualified persons. They are not lecturers. And we've got another tweet from Chesney Peters says, Newsroom, I view unqualified teachers as parents trying to feed their families. Unati says, those must be done away with and be treated as fraudsters and face the consequences, both for them as well as their employers. Now we've come back from those very interesting comments. Please do keep them coming at SABC Newsroom as well as on our Facebook page. That's where we would like to get all of those comments. Now, President Jacob Zuma is expected to officially open the Basic Education Lekgotla at St. George's Hotel, Pretoria today. In fact, he has done so. The three-day Lekgotla organized by the Department of Basic Education will reflect on the performance of the entire basic education sector over the years. The Minister of Basic Education, Angie Motshekga, spoke to SABC News about today's Lekgotla.
We meet annually as a sector where we have all the provinces, MECs, heads of department and senior managers, plus the parts, some NGOs that work with us, but also government bodies that work with us, to consolidate on the plans of the previous year and report to each other, share experiences, and review again what we would have agreed as a plan for 2016 or the previous year in terms of how in the first 10 days the school has started. But really it's an annual Lekgotla where we plan together but also share experiences and ideas.
How important is this forum in terms of making sure that you align the work for the year ahead?
No, it's very important because we have one single education system in the country, but we also have different spheres of government, and which is also very helpful for the sector because then we have different energies coming from different angles of the country. But then what is important is to make sure that we pool and make sure that a child who is in Cape Town and the child who are in Limpopo benefit equally in the system. So it's great to share experiences, to consolidate the work that we are doing and make sure that all our children, there's no child who's left behind, all our children benefit equally and we share experience. So it's a very important Lekgotla for us as a sector.
Now, the ANC will hold its National Executive Committee Lekgotla in Pretoria tomorrow. The meeting is expected to discuss the land issue and the redistribution of wealth.
For the governing ANC, the start of a new year signals the time to set priorities for the year. The ANC meets for its Lekgotla to help identify issues requiring urgent attention and help guide the work of the ANC in government.
When we meet at the Lekgotla, we come up with what is called a plan of action to practicalize what would have come out of the January 8th statement. It is important to do so because you can't just give promises, you make commitments as the African National Congress. How do you then guide your own cadres, both in government and outside of government, to make sure that the things that you spoke about in the January 8th statement are achievable?
The meeting comes just weeks after the annual January 8th statement by President Jacob Zuma, where he made a number of commitments. It has since singled out the land question and the redistribution of wealth as the main focus.
We make a bold statement that we must return the land to the people. The president, only this past weekend, when he was addressing in Bakersford, he makes the statement again that this year we must make an effort to make sure that we really change the ownership of the land, including that of the economy. We think our emphasis on those two clauses will make a lot of difference.
The Wednesday meeting will include ANC employees in government, including ministers and their deputies, directors general and mayors. Msandile Mbeje, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now, President Jacob Zuma says progress has been made in the basic education sector. He was speaking during the opening of the Basic Education Lekgotla in Pretoria. Zuma says government has expanded access to free education to children. He says over 9 million children attend no-fee schools.
Education is the key for development. Without education, no nation will ever develop at the rate at which things are done in the modern world. Countries that are called developing countries will never cross the line and become developed without modern education. Countries that invested in education, they don't regret after a few decades. In fact, any country that invests in education is investing wisely. It's a national investment that will never go wrong, because you begin not only to produce job seekers, but actually you begin to produce job creators. So it is important that we cannot stand and allow schools that have zero outcome. It means they don't understand the simple logic that education is what makes us grow and therefore be one of the countries in the community of countries in the world who makes a contribution towards development of society. I urge this meeting to pay special attention and develop concrete plans to attend to whatever problems that exist in the underperforming districts, provinces, and schools. Let us attend to shortcomings and ensure that we continue improving performance in education. We have no choice but to succeed as a country, particularly a country, South Africa, which has a task that we may understand and not understand to perform in the continent. Many countries in the continent look up to South Africa to participate at the head of the development of the continent. Education is our only weapon towards prosperity. Director of the program, in conclusion, as government, we appreciate and acknowledge the positive contribution of our dedicated teachers and teacher unions, corporate South Africa, NGOs, principals, associations, SGB associations, learner formations, and civil society as a whole. Working together, we shall ensure that our schools produce learners who are well equipped to help us build inclusive growth and prosperity when they graduate.
Those are the words of the President Jacob Zuma, who was opening that Lekgotla earlier on this morning. And it is a buzzword. It is a big thing that is happening today, that we're all focusing our attention on education and where to for our children and our wards, if so to speak. And I know Elvis has actually started off the day along with Eben, bringing up the question of what happens with unqualified lecturers at TVETs and FETs. Elvis, I would imagine that some of the comments that we've gotten, they've actually gone a long way towards giving us a barometer of how our viewers feel. Not just the barometer, but also to indicate exactly where we stand with some of these colleges, Kendall. We had a couple of interviews which we had to pre-record, which we'll play back to the viewers either today or tomorrow, in the indication from the department in terms of where they stand with these bogus colleges. But staying with education, a Middelburg principal who allegedly assaulted a pupil has been suspended. He said that he said to have accused the 14-year-old and another boy of stealing 150 rand. The alleged assault took place when the boy denied the allegation. He is now wheelchair-bound.
Finally getting his marching orders after 2 months of inaction by the Mpumalanga Education Department. The principal allegedly tripped and pinned Siphamandla Chuma down with his knee on his chest. The 14-year-old subsequently lost feeling in his legs and has to use diapers.
Why it took so long for the department to act on the matter is that the matter was reported on the first week of December when schools were getting ready to close. What was happening is that we still needed the principal to be back at school when schools reopen for further questioning.
The principal refused to comment.
What are you planning to do?
What must I do?
Are you going to defend yourself in court or?
Only showing us this Bible scripture that reads, "You don't have to do anything. The Lord will fight for you." The family says police failed them.
The case was opened last year during December on the 6th, and of course, when it was opened, we then took relevant statements, and such statements have then been presented before the public prosecutor for a decision. And after such a decision has been taken, the prosecutor decided that there are further statements that we need to take, and we are busy complying with that instruction of the public prosecutor.
When the SABC visited the family on Monday, the boy was left alone with his 12-year-old sister and another infant. The Department of Social Development has already sent social workers to visit the family. Sibongile Mkanimbolweni, SABC News, Middelburg in Mpumalanga.
Financial news now. The Reserve Bank is expected to keep the repo rate unchanged when it meets today. Economists expect the bank to keep the rate at 7%. However, consumer inflation should start easing in the next few months, which could prompt the bank to lower rates in the near future. Inflation is expected to slow to an average of 5.8% for this year after hitting a 6.4% average last year. News from abroad now. Attempts are underway to save the Trans-Pacific Partnership Pact after the US President Donald Trump kept his promise to pull out of it. Australia and New Zealand say that they hope to salvage the deal by encouraging China and other Asian nations to join the trade pact. The TPP, which the United States had signed but not ratified, was a pillar of the former US President Barack Obama's pivot to Asia. Now, it was framed without China in an effort to establishing the US economic leadership in the region.
All right, we're going to sign 3 memorandums right now. The first one is withdrawal from the United States from the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Everyone knows what that means, right? We've been talking about this for a long time. Thank you. Okay. Great thing for the American worker, what we just did.
Next, a federal government employee hiring freeze.
Except for the military.
Except for the military.
Except for the military.
Next is the policy in regard to Mexico City.
Thank you very much.
Well, media savvy, that Donald Trump, isn't he? That's where we got to leave it for now. We'll take a break. We'll be right back after that.
I don't know what's going on. Suddenly I'm locked up.
This is not fair. Not fair.
Kuputse rent ka 200. Have to kupula ka 200. Uri ngwana o iwa. 150 plus koloi leone tlamehile in another 150.
I'm just the one to lock you out. Yes, I you have just the want to keys. lock me then out.
You are starting gangsterism.
No.
No! No!
The SADC Oversight Committee, mandated to be an early warning mechanism for instability in Lesotho, met the Speaker of the National Assembly on its second mission to the Mountain Kingdom. The committee is also monitoring constitutional and security reforms and the implementation of the recommendations of the Pumapi Commission into the death of the former Army Commander Mabarankwe Mahao.
Early elections and the killing of a former army commander have resulted in SADC appointing this committee to keep a constant eye on Lesotho.
Madam Speaker,
The National Assembly remains highly charged
you are subverting the law of this country. Madam Speaker,
as the opposition and the government battle it out for control of the government. When Parliament reopens on the 24th of February, the drama is likely to continue.
And we have the government side with the Prime Minister. Right there.
The meeting with the Speaker may shed light on what is likely to transpire. The opposition vows to move a vote of no confidence.
The Parliament must be opened as soon as they can, because they have to show their powers in the Parliament.
The government threatens to call for fresh elections.
It is an issue that there's a split within the DC, and that means if you lose one or two people, there's always some apprehension. But it's okay. It is politics, that's democracy. If they decided to leave and form another party, that's fine. But what will happen then is that it is an issue for Parliament, and the issue of motion of no confidence has to be tested on the floor of Parliament.
For now, this oversight committee has to advise SADC on how to avoid any escalation. It will meet stakeholders, including the government, the opposition, and civil society.
On the face of it, life seems normal on the streets of the Lesotho capital, Maseru, but below the surface, constant political rumblings that may mean instability for this country, and the SADC Oversight Committee will have to determine if they have any effect. Ntakwana Ngatane, SABC News, Maseru, Lesotho.
Kenya's Electoral Commission is carrying out final voter registration ahead of polls scheduled for August this year. President Uhuru Kenyatta will fight to stay in power against long-term opposition candidate Raila Odinga in a country that has battled with corruption but has seen some economic growth.
Kenya is in a crucial final push to register voters ahead of general elections scheduled for August 2017. The month-long exercise is being carried out by the Independent Electoral Boundaries Commission. The commission is targeting 6 million new voters by February the 14th. But early days of the registration have seen low turnout in some areas and a few cases of flawed or missing voter identification details.
This is the first time I am voting. I want to pick the voter's card, but the queue is moving slowly and I have things to attend to.
It's a bit frustrating because I've been queuing here for more than 2 hours. And then when I get there, I'm told that I've already registered. And when I sent the message, I was told there are no records found.
Veteran opposition leader Raila Odinga challenged the result of the race, which lost to President Uhuru Kenyatta, blaming the failure of the BVR kits and other technical glitches on the shortcomings of the commission and on corruption. Electoral Commission officials say they are working to identify and correct any technical challenges, including some cases reported during the ongoing registration.
More than 99% of kits performed well on the first day, and the challenges that were actually experienced with respect to the 1% of the kits were also expected, given that these BVR kits were actually purchased 5 years ago. And with the time, most of these challenges are likely to be faced.
Less than 8 months to the polls, and it is feared the issues facing Kenyans, like the ongoing drought, the economy and corruption, are still not being addressed. In addition, violence has often been a feature of Kenyan elections. After the 2007 vote, 1,200 people were killed in ethnic fighting.
Well, that's your news for now. Kendall Makamate standing by with your sports news.
Thank you very much, Elvis. A very interesting sporting day that we had yesterday as well as today. Now we start off with football, where Zimbabwe and Algeria were sent packing from the 2017 Africa Cup of Nations football tournament in Gabon. This after failing to win their final Group B matches. Algeria played out to a 2-2 draw against Senegal, while Zimbabwe suffered a 4-2 defeat at the hands of Tunisia.
Willard Katsale leading out the Zimbabweans, the big friend.
Zimbabwe ruled their missed chances in their first match of the tournament against Algeria as Tunisia ran rampant last night. The Warriors were looking for their first win in Group B, but it wasn't to be.
Long-range shot, goal for Tunisia. Sleety getting second of the tournament.
Tunisia were impressive winners in the encounter, scoring 2 goals in 22 minutes as they dominated their opponent. Taha Kenisi extended Tunisia's lead on his first appearance of the tournament with a fine finish.
Oh, what a lovely goal! Kenisi into the side. Quick as a flash.
Zimbabwe, however, regrouped and Knowledge Musona pulled one back for the Warriors.
Still Musona gets the shot in, gets the goal. Zimbabwe have pulled one back.
And at the stroke of half-time, Zimbabwe committed a foul inside the penalty area and Wabi Kazri restored the 3-goal cushion for Tunisia from the resulting penalty.
Kazri through the goalkeeper.
Tandai Ndoro came off the bench in the second half and put the ball in the back of the net just before the hour mark. But the damage had already been done as the Warriors bowed out of the event after losing the match 4-2. Algeria were one of the pre-tournament favourites and were up against Senegal in their last Group B match. Leicester City's Islam Slimani scored in the 10th minute of the match to put Algeria ahead. But Papa Koli Chiop came up with a sucker punch before half-time.
It's there, it's the equaliser.
And early in the second half, Slimani completed his brace as he put his side ahead once again.
Straight forward for Slimani. Has it crossed the line? Yes, a goal is given.
Musa Sow, however, levelled matters for the Lions of Teranga, and that was the end of Algeria's campaign in this year's tournament.
Cracked in by Musa Sow. The lead only lasts for a few seconds.
This evening at 9, Morocco will play Cote d'Ivoire, while Democratic Republic of Congo will be up against Togo in the final Group C matches. Mduduzi Ndlovu, SABC News.
Now, moving on to the other massive tournament that's going on across the world, this time in Melbourne. Coco van der Weijg, a stunned French Open champion, Gabin Muguruza, in a blitz of big hitting to storm into the first Australian Open semi-final, where she'll meet fellow American, the evergreen Venus Williams. The unseeded power hitter upset the 7th-seeded Spaniard 6-4, 6-love on Rod Laver Arena in a dominant display to secure her first ever berth in a Grand Slam last fall. Van der Weijg was equally impressive when dispatching world number 1 Angelique Kerber in the previous round. Now, Venus Williams powered past Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova into a third Australian Open semi-final and her first in 40 years, becoming the oldest woman to make a Grand Slam last fall in 23 years. The 36-year-old overcame the Russian 6-4, 7-6.
An impressive performance from the 13th seed, and she couldn't be happier.
Fantastic stuff there, making a comeback, making sure that she's still as good as the rest at 36 years old, beating much younger tennis players. Now, Bernie Ecclestone's 40-year reign as Formula One's commercial supremo has ended. The sport's new owners, Liberty Media, have replaced the 86-year-old Briton with American Chase Carey. Now, signaling the end of an era, Liberty said in a statement that it had completed the acquisition of Formula One and appointed Chairman Carey to the additional role of Chief Executive. Liberty says Ecclestone would remain available as a source of advice for the board of F1. Liberty also named 2 managing directors. That's former Ferrari technical director and ex-Mercedes team boss Ross Brawn for motorsports and former ESPN executive Sean Bratches for commercial operations. The takeover, valued at $8 billion, including debt, has been broadly welcomed in a sport featuring famous car brands such as Ferrari, McLaren and world champions Mercedes. Liberty, owned by the US cable TV mogul John Malone, has emphasized the importance of traditional European venues and wants to expand in the Americas. Now, with that said, there have been a whole lot of comments that you've been sharing with us on social media about some of the big sporting news from around the world. And I believe the first one that we can bring you is with regards to AFCON 2017. Tiani says the standard of AFCON 2017 has been disappointing. Africa is unlikely to make an impact in the World Cup, Russia 2018. You speak truth, sire. It's going to be difficult to see how the lack of goals is going to translate into goals in World Cup 2018. Lloyd says Senegal versus Cameroon, quarters 28th of Jan 2017. If Senegal get knocked out, I wonder if Mane can make the Chelsea game. Very interesting there. Zimbabwean team is good, but that guy, is he a soccer coach or a politician? He seems to be in the wrong department. Yes, talking about the presser, the coach after that press conference that they had earlier on. Now, we're looking at Australian Open now. David Law says, Roddick, if Federer plays Nadal in the final, it will be the biggest match in Australian Open history, possibly Grand Slam history. Really? David Law? All right, let's see. Risky Lazuardito, Australian Open 2017. Johanna Conte showing mental strength in a bid for a major title. Yes, you definitely need to have mental strength if you're going to be in the last four of any tournament, I'll have you know. Laurie Saffel, the way Roger Federer plays, his backhand still a most majestic sight. Yes, seemingly Federer back at his imperious best. And Brett Jaffe says Venus Williams makes the semis of another Grand Slam at the age of 36, the oldest female semi-finalist in Australian Open history. Incredible. I agree with you there. Centre Court Carlin, I wouldn't even care who wins because it'll just be beautiful. So beautiful. Yeah, it's been an amazing Australian Open so far. Now we've got some Protea fire for you before we close off this show. Gerald Twala reckons that Ngidi should have been named because he rocks. He should have been named Ngude because he rocks so much. Ah, very funny and very good. Yes, he's been called up to the ODI squad to face Sri Lanka coming up shortly. Ali Mohammed, imagine Kagiso Rabada and Ngidi Lungi bowling together. What an attack. Oh yes, Daryl Cullinan, the sons of domestic workers, you say. Linz, our teamwork is amazing. Phenomenal stuff. That's what we've got for you. Thank you very much for having joined us. We really enjoyed having you join us on the show and give us your thoughts and your comments. We're looking forward to another afternoon and evening of great sporting action, which we'll be bringing you the results of tomorrow morning. And with everything said and everything done, you have been watching Newsroom. I want to thank you very much for having joined us. We'll be back tomorrow morning, and I believe that from tomorrow morning all the way into the weekend, we will not be disappointed with what we're going to be bringing you in terms of news, analysis, as well as sporting reports. From me and the rest of the team that brought this to you live from Johannesburg, listen.